Welcome back, it's Jason.
Hey there, it's Josh, and we're standing out here on the Habitat Oasis Project. It's been about a year since we started the project, and we thought it was time to give you an update on how things have been going.
So what we're planning on doing today is we've got a number of topics we want to run through real quick with you. We're going to talk about how we've expanded the Habitat Oasis Project. We're going to look at the projects we did this year and talk about what worked, what didn't, and what we learned. We're going to talk about an unexpected conservation award that we received, new partners that we're working with, and we're going to touch on 2021 plans.
All right, so let's get started. So Jason mentioned that we were expanding the scope of the Habitat Oasis. If you've seen the original update that we did earlier this year, we talked about the Habitat Oasis project being a reclaimed 80-acre strip mine. On the front side of that, we have another 70 acres that we originally purchased, and unbeknownst to us at that time, that property was also part of the overall mining efforts back in the 60s and 70s and maybe even earlier. The folks that owned the property before us had taken quite a bit of measures around conservation as well. And so we've expanded the scope to include the whole 150 acres. So we'll talk about some of the projects that we completed there as well.
Great, let's get started.
Before we jump into the projects and the progress and the lessons, there's three things I wanted to mention about this project that most of you may or may not realize. But because this was strip mine land, we're battling really three big challenges. The soil quality, it's shallow and it's compacted. So we've got maybe 8 to 10 inches of topsoil, decent kind of rocky soil before it gets to soil that is really poor in quality. So any kind of plants or trees with a long tap root are kind of out of the question for us out here. The next thing is the entire property was planted in Sericea lespedeza, which is now known to be a very invasive plant. Puts down a lot of seed every year, and so we've spent a lot of time trying to kill back the Sericea and introduce new plants that will choke out the Sericea. And the third issue is autumn olive. Autumn olive is a big kind of bushy tree or shrub, and we've got huge ones here. You can see a bunch in the background here. They're everywhere. They do provide some value to birds from berries, but that's actually the reason why they're so invasive is the seeds get spread everywhere. And they don't have a tremendous amount of wildlife benefit otherwise. So those are kind of the three things that you'll hear us talking about in the video that we're looking to overcome.
So one of our big projects this year was to plant 250 native trees, shrubs, and bushes on the Habitat Oasis project. Had some successes, had some learning, some lessons that we learned this year. So we started this project in the probably April time frame, ordering trees, ordering tubes, getting all of our materials in. By the time they were in, it was mid to late May, and by the time we started planting, it was actually in June. We came out, we started planting trees, we felt really good about the conditions. The ground was soft, we were able to get our trees in the ground, plenty of moisture, felt really good about what we were doing. We got about 75 of them in the ground that first weekend, and then took a break. While we took that break, we talked to our forester that does a lot of advice for us, and his question for us was, why in the world are you planting in June? We explained the delays, and his comment was, good luck. I hope that they do well, but this is not the time of year to be planting trees. At that time, we had a decision to make. Do we continue to plant and hope for the best, or do we bag it? So I came back out to plant, and it was probably 2 weeks after the first planting. The ground was hard, it was dry. The trees we had planted didn't look good, and I was really questioning, should I put all these trees in the ground? So instead, I took them home. I put them in pots on my back patio, and all summer, I kept them watered and just basically kept them healthy. We had good, healthy plants all summer long. So here we are in December. The advice for planting trees is plant them when they're dormant, and you can plant them anytime that the ground is not frozen. So we're here mid-December. The ground is actually pretty soft. We're able to get the trees in the ground, and we're going to get the balance of that 250 into the ground here in December. So when we look back at what we learned, one, start your planning early. we're actually planting now. We've ordered trees for next year. Get that planting early. You want to be planting in April and May, not letting it run into June. Give those trees a good start in late spring. The other thing we learned was, even trees, even if you get them in late, you may have some success, and we did have some success. We probably had about a 30% mortality rate. We had buttonbush that did really well. We had American plum that started off well. Almost every one of the American plum died. The American hazelnut, it looked bad at first. I think it was kind of shock, but it bounced back. So it actually did pretty good. So lesson learned, plan ahead, order early, and make sure that you're getting them in the ground at the right point in time. So with that, if you want to learn or hear more about that overall project and what we planted, check out the video, planting 250 native trees, shrubs, and bushes. I just added a link here. From here, we'll head on to the next project and give you an update there. Okay, so I'm standing on the edge of a 2-acre field that we planted in a honeybee mix through an organization called the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. We partnered with them to obtain free pollinator seed, and earlier this year we planted that honeybee mix. There's 2 acres of it. Looking around, the majority of what's in it is clover, and we've actually got a decent amount of clover in this field. It's year 1 for the clover, so my expectation is in the spring we will see a lot more clover come up. I'm debating overseeding this with the same mix again this spring, doing a frost seed just to help thicken it up, but kind of waiting to see what it looks like, but may add some seed there. The other aspect of this project is a pollinator mix that is for the monarch butterfly. That is seed that I have that will be planted in the next several weeks, so it is a dormant season planting that we will do, but pretty excited to be associated with the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. I actually have been so impressed with them as an organization that I started volunteering for them earlier this year, helping with some marketing activities. So if you have an area where you could commit 2 acres to Bee and Butterfly Habitat, leave us a message, let me know, and I can help connect you with someone that can tell you how the program works and possibly get you some free seed for your property. All right, so let's take a break from projects and talk about the award. We were nominated and won the 2020 Cooperator of the Year Award from the local Soil and Water Conservation District. What started off for us as a fun project to improve the property turned into a completely unexpected award. We had partnered with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Division of Wildlife, the Division of Forestry. We had worked with the USDA NRCS to get our EQIP contract in place. The local Soil and Water Conservation District, we rented equipment from them. The Bee and Butterfly Habitat. There's a number of organizations that have lent their expertise to us and have been integral in what we're doing on the Habitat Oasis project. As part of that, we were posting videos of our progress. Our NRCS representative saw those videos. He shared those with his management, and when it came time to nominate people, he identified us as a great candidate for the project. So what we're really excited about, excited to be recognized. It came as a complete surprise. But one of the things that we're really excited about is the efforts and the things we're doing on the Habitat Oasis project to improve the habitat and make it convert it back to more native plants is something that is getting some recognition around Southeast Ohio. So really excited about it. Don't know what it takes to repeat, but we'd love to go out and take a stab at it in 2021 and make some big changes and come back with some more recognition in the coming year. Who knows? All right, let's get started with a clover field. This was actually one of the original projects on the Habitat Oasis project. And for 2020, the real plan here was how do we improve it and maintain it for the coming year and on into the future. So we started off the year, I guess even before I did a soil test, but before that, in the early spring, I came out and frost seeded. So March, April timeframe, this got overseeded with a mix of clovers. I usually do red clover, crimson clover, ladino. So we've got a good mix of clover here in the field. So I started off with that. We then did a soil test to see what it needed and added lime and fertilizer to the field. It called for a little more than we put on it, but because we were doing a lot of different areas and where we were financially, we didn't have the money to put the fully prescribed amount into every area. So we added a portion to each area, which is certainly better than not doing anything at all. The other thing I did this year that I've not done in the past was I decided to add an herbicide treatment. So I had some grasses coming up, and I hit the field with clethodim, and that knocked back a lot of my grasses. So you hear a lot of people talk that if you don't use herbicide annually, you will lose your clover field, and it won't last more than about 3 years. This is the third year. This field is really looking good. I had real lush clover over the summer. If you look around here now, there's still a lot of clover here. The deer are browsing it at the end of December. If you take a look at this field from a distance, you'll see it's one of the few green spots out here on the Habitat Oasis. So if you're looking for something green late into the season or for late season, clover is a great choice. I know a lot of people say that, but this is proof. This field stays green. Other things you'll notice here, I'm standing amongst some tree tubes. We planted about a dozen trees here in the field. I've got chokeberry, I've got red twig dogwood, I've got American hazelnut, and American plum. So a variety of native trees that as they come in will start to shield part of this field from visibility from a distance. So make the deer a little more comfortable feeding in here in the evenings and not feel like they're standing out in the open. Last thing you'll see here, behind me there's a few bird houses. We built some bluebird houses and put those up. So we're definitely doing things for not only the deer, but things are going to benefit turkeys, songbirds, as well as, well, I guess the bluebirds are songbirds. We also have some edge feathering along here for our ground nesting birds. So lots going on. Real happy with the clover field and how it's looking. And we're going to head off and check a few other projects now.
All right, so an update on our timber stand improvement. As part of the EQIP program, we had an EQIP oak program. So in Ohio, the oak forests are being overtaken with invasives and stuff like maple. They outgrow, they're faster, and autumn olive is one of the big issues that we have around here. And so part of the EQIP, a large, probably a third of the front 70 acres we had underneath the timber stand improvement program, where there's cost share. I do the work and get the chemicals and do all of the removal of the invasive, and then we get some payment at the end of the year. So I put in probably 30 to 35 hours this year going around with loppers, chainsaws, pole saws, and a backpack sprayer, and doing cut stump on all of this stuff around, I would say, 25 to 30 acres. I think we'll put a map up to show. I could be wrong on the exact acreage, but the goal was to cut it back, treat it, and kill it. I started early in the spring, and actually before the spring, and I've learned a few things about that. One, the area that I'm standing in right now is along a wood's edge, and so autumn olive leaves out the earliest, and it keeps its leaves the longest. So we'll show you some views around here. We've got a lot of reforestation that's taking place, but along the edge here, there's nothing. There's no new trees coming up through here because that autumn olive was shading everything. And I was climbing through here probably 6 autumn olive deep. I'd cut one, try to get it to lay down, cut the next one, treat it. But I'm going to show you what kind of went wrong here. What went wrong was based on the treatment time of the year, I believe. We got a lot of resprouts. And I've got resprouts here on stumps that I cut in February, March time frame that are waist high on me. So this stuff grows like crazy. That's why it's so invasive. It grows more rapidly than anything around it, and it creates shade and prevents the other stuff from growing. And oak's one of the slowest growing hardwoods that we have, and the fact that maples and invasives grow so quickly, they get shaded out and they're not actually reforesting our wood. So a lot of effort, a lot of time put into it. I think the total payment that I got this year was about $1,300, so it was a decent chunk of money, but for the effort, I'm not so sure about it. I mean, I was climbing the hills, doing the work, but overall, our goal was to leave things better than we found them, and so we're going to do that, and I think we'll see the benefit over time. This area was one of the worst, both on slope and coverage, and it had a 2-year treatment plan. So the fact that we're seeing stuff sprouting back up is not a huge issue, because we're going to treat it again this year, and should be a lot easier. What I am going to change for next year is I'm going to go to a basal bark treatment. So triclopor and diesel. The diesel helps cut into the bark, and the triclopor will kill the tree better than the glyphosate did. So that's the plan, and yeah, it's come a long way, but there's still a good ways to go.
Okay, so now I'm standing in a field that we planted in native warm season grasses. We did a combination of big blue stem, little blue stem, side oats gamma, and Indian grass. This was our first foray into using the no-till drill. So we rented it from the local Soil and Water Conservation District, and had big plans to plant native warm season grasses, to plant some soybeans, and some switchgrass. We got the drill out here. We made a number of trips around the field with the grass, and I kept checking the seed bin and noticing we weren't really emptying the bin very fast. So we continued to go over it, and we went over it and over it and over it, and we just weren't seeing the seed bin go down the way it should have. We spent several hours working on it before we realized that one of the mistakes we made was we had not added anything to the seed to help it go through the tube. So what we needed was graphite, and you add that into the seed, and that helps make sure that those fluffy seeds feed down through the tubes. Our overall experience, really liked the no-till drill. It's a nice piece of equipment, but with the one mistake we made, it dramatically impacted our success in this area. We actually finished this up, felt like it was kind of a complete failure because we had not put down much seed. We did have our NRCS representative come out as part of our EQIP program to check our progress and see how things were going. As we walked through this field, he was able to identify a number of clumps of native warm season grass that were coming up. So it was where we were very discouraged. He, with a much better eye for the plant than what we have, he was able to identify quite a bit of it growing here. One of the things about native warm season grasses is there's kinds of a 3-phase approach. The first is sleep, and that's when your native warm season grasses are putting down roots. The next is creep, and that's where you start to see it spread and you're getting a little bit more coverage. And in year 3 is leap, where you see it really start to produce. So where we've got some success in this field, what we plan on doing with this is overseeding it in the spring with some additional seed. We may rent the drill again and use it with graphite and really put down the seed at the rate it should be. And the other thing is we'll look at applying an herbicide that is safe for native warm season grasses. We actually use Plateau, which will help kill back some of the weeds that are here and give the native warm season grasses a better chance. So all in all, this was a project that a lot of learning, but that's just part of the process for us. So native warm season grass field, lessons learned. We'll do better with it in 2021.
All right, so for this update, we're going to combine Rabbitat, brush piles, and autumn olive removal. On the Habitat Oasis, we've got a ton of autumn olive. Part of our EQIP program with the USDA's NRCS group, we were removing about 1.5 acres to 2 acres of autumn olive as part of the habitat improvement. But we also had a program to build brush piles. We knew we had to get rid of these big trees, and this was a great way to reuse all of what you see behind us. So we've got a huge network of piles. We're seeing a tremendous improvement in the rabbit population around here. Every time we're out, we see rabbits. The birds are taking a lot of use of them. We've seen tons of birds out here that we weren't seeing before. And overall, we've got a lot more to remove, but I think we're going to change our approach. So one of the lessons that we learned was, we were using a mechanical approach to remove these. We were using our tractors to push them over and then pop them out. As I mentioned, the soil here is very shallow, so they came out pretty easy. However, we had a couple damages made to the tractor. So my radiator got busted. Jason had a hydraulic hose that got busted. So little taxing on the tractor ate up some of the money that we could have been using to put back into the habitat. So I think we'll move to more of a basal bark treatment going forward and see how that works. That'll also allow the autumn olive to stay standing so the birds can continue to use them. The deer are actually feeding around the piles and the autumn olive, so they like kind of that edge. So that's a good reason to potentially leave some of them standing until more of our new trees and new habitat starts to grow. So one final lesson that we learned was, in a lot of these cases, we had huge stumps that we cut, or we pushed over big trees, and because we took them, and took all the roots out, we thought that they were gone, and we piled brush on top of them. So one of the lessons is make sure that they're all sprayed and killed before you pile anything, or just move your pile, because we did have some autumn olive growing back up through the brush piles, and they're a little bit harder to treat when you can't get down to them. So lesson learned, we won't be piling stuff on top of the stumps anymore.
All right, so one last thing we mentioned at the beginning was that we were going to talk about new partnerships for 2021. One of the things we're doing is we're constantly learning as we go, so we're looking for experts that can help us. Just in the last week or two, we got in touch with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, and we're starting to work with that organization to look at our property and see, are there things we can do to improve those species? So along with the existing organizations, we've added that. We're interested in continuing to expand those experts that we talk to and that help us out. So if there's organizations that you know of that might be able to help us out, leave us a comment and let us know how they might be able to help us and how to get in touch with them. Okay, so that's a pretty good overview of what we did in 2020, and we're currently working on our 2021 plans. Right now I'm standing in our, mini apple orchard where we've got 8 apple trees that are a couple years old. One of the things we want to do is expand the number of fruit and mast trees that we're putting in. So we do have 20 trees ordered that will be planted in the spring, and it's a variety of chestnuts and persimmons. So that's one of the things we're doing. We're going to put together a larger list that we'll share in another video, but Josh has a couple things that he's also got on his plate that he's going to share.
Yeah, so the first thing is we're going to continue the timber stand improvement, so more autumn olive out of the woods, working on that EQIP, that oak EQIP program, and I'm working with the NRCS right now to get that extended another 3 years so that the entire front 70 is covered from about 4 or 5 years worth of effort. The other thing that I think is the most exciting and is going to be pretty cool is we're calling it the 50 House Project. And we're going to take the tractors, the sawmill, some other timber stand work that we're doing, and cut down some pine trees and build 50 houses for birds. So 50 bird house project for a variety of different types of species. And we're looking forward to taking you through that journey from felling the trees to milling the wood to building the houses. And we're hoping to recruit some of the youth from our family and others to help us put those together. And then we'll take you on the journey to get them all installed. So yeah, that's just a couple of the things that we have planned, but there's going to be a lot more.
Definitely more to come. So as we stand here, end of December 2020, keep in mind our slogan, outdoors is always in season. So wind blowing, cold out, we're out here finding something to do. So thanks for joining us. Please hit the like button, share our channel with your friends, and subscribe.
See you next time.